Lara was just another applicant among dozens for the nanny position. A simple woman, fresh from a small town in North Carolina, with a worn suitcase in hand and hidden scars on her heart. But inside that lavish Los Angeles mansion, two twins refused to eat, and their widowed father had completely given up. No one saw a way out until Lara stepped into the kitchen. With soul-stirring recipes and a love that transcended words, she taught that family to feel again. Because sometimes cooking is the quietest way to love. Just one more spoonful, Elena. Please. The voice was gentle, but no one responded. The little girl turned her face away, arms crossed. Ethan, beside his sister, pushed his fork around his plate without bringing anything to his mouth. David watched it all from the dining room doorway. Deep shadows under his eyes, a lump in his throat, exhaustion etched into his silence. You need to eat, he tried again. Just that. Eat. We're not hungry, Dad, Elena whispered, her gaze fixed on the floor. Lara, observing the scene carefully, asked for permission with a gesture. May I try to talk to them? David simply nodded, defeated. She knelt down at their eye level. Do you two like cornbread? Their little eyes reacted. A lot, Ethan replied. Then you are hungry, she said, smiling faintly. You just don't want to eat this. That's when Elena murmured, We're saving food. For Mum. Lara hadn't studied pedagogy, nor did she speak 3 languages like some of the other candidates, but there was something in the way she observed things, as if she saw what lay beneath the surface of words. Coming from rural North Carolina, she had grown up in her Grandma Rosie's kitchen, a woman who seasoned food with affection. There, Lara learned that a simple meal could mend broken hearts, and that a child's silence was never without reason. After being left at the altar by her fiancé 20 days before the wedding, Lara gave up on everything. She quit her catering job, sold the few possessions she had, and boarded a bus for Los Angeles, trying to escape the pain. In her suitcase, she carried clothes, spices, and a couscous recipe that her grandmother swore was miraculous. In that enormous Faraz residence, everything was stunning. Marble countertops, imported chairs, absolute silence. But it only took a few minutes with Elena and Ethan for Lara to realize this family was broken from within. David was polite, but distant. He responded with yes and thank you, but his eyes were far away, like someone living on autopilot. He mentioned that since his wife Rebecca's passing, the children had refused food. Doctors, nutritionists, and psychologists had all tried. Nothing worked, but no one had asked why. No one had heard what Eleanor had just whispered. We're saving food. For Mom. Lara felt a pang in her chest. She herself knew loss. Not of death, but of abandonment. She knew what it was like to wait for someone who wouldn't return. And where are you keeping it, my dears? She asked gently. Ethan exchanged a look with his sister and ran off. He returned with a shoebox in his hands. Inside, small plastic containers with leftover rice, beans, a piece of bread, a day-old muffin. When she comes back, she'll be hungry. We want her to have something to eat. David sat down, speechless. Lara also remained silent. She knew this wasn't the time to explain about death. It was time to be present, wholly, something no one in that house had been for a long time. And it was there that everything began to unfold. In the days that followed, Lara started going to the Faraz house every day, still on a trial basis. But no one seemed to be testing her. The children quickly began to follow her around the house as if they had found sanctuary. And David watched from afar, trying to understand how this woman, without a stellar resume or refined demeanor, achieved what no one else had, making Elena smile and Ethan eat. That Tuesday, Lara decided to try something new. How about we make breakfast together? But we don't know how to cook, Elena said, suspicious. I'll teach you, Lara replied, opening her spice box. It was an old wooden box, smelling of childhood. Inside were paprika, fennel, turmeric, and a jar of homemade vanilla extract that her grandmother used to make. This here, she said, showing a small yellow packet, is called fennel. Do you know what my grandma used to say? That it helps heal stomach aches from sadness. The children laughed. For the first time in months, there was laughter in that kitchen. They made pancakes. The first one was misshapen, the second stuck to the pan, but the third, "This one's perfect," Ethan exclaimed proudly, showing off his creation. David appeared at the doorway holding his coffee mug. "What are you guys up to?" "Good morning, breakfast," Elena shouted, her mouth still full. "Lara said good food makes your heart happier." "She did?" he asked, looking at Lara. "I did," she confirmed. "And I'm proving it." That morning, everyone ate together at the table. For the first time in a long time, Lara began to believe she was helping, that maybe, just maybe, she had found a place where she could start anew. Every afternoon she cooked something with the children: corn cake, cheese biscuits, shepherd's pie with cheddar. They asked about Grandma Rosie, about the town where Lara grew up, about her grandmother's restaurant. "Do you still want to have a restaurant, Aunt Lara?" Elena asked. "Yes, my dear, but first I want to help a family get back on their feet." It was true. For the first time, Lara felt important to someone. But when the weekend arrived, David disappeared into his office. "Is your dad having dinner?" she asked. "He said he can't. He has a meeting," Ethan replied, without looking up from his plate. The next day, the same thing. And the day after. The warmth of the first few days began to fade. Lara saw the cupboards fill up again with pre-made meals, and silence returned to the table. For a moment, she thought she might be deluding herself. That, all of it, the smiles, the hugs, the shared breakfasts, was just a pause in a grief that was never hers, and he still thought he could fix everything alone. The following week, David practically vanished, locked in his office, sleeping late, speaking little. The children felt it. Lara did too. "Is your dad having dinner tonight?" she asked once more. "I don't think so," Eleanor replied softly, pushing her rice around on her plate. "He just works now." Lara tried not to be shaken. She kept cooking, trying to maintain warmth in the house. But every meal with an empty chair was a reminder she was losing ground, and the children were losing their father. Again, on Wednesday morning, Eleanor woke up with a fever. "My tummy hurts," she said, resting her face on Lara's belly. Lara took her temperature, 101.3 degrees. She made tea, prepared a light soup, put the girl down to rest. But the fever wouldn't break. Worried, she went to David's office. She knocked on the door 3 times. "What is it?" He opened, irritated, with deep-set eyes and unshaven. "It's Elena. She has a fever and abdominal pain. She needs to see a doctor." "Fever?" He frowned, as if not processing. "Yes, I've tried everything." "What did she eat yesterday?" He cut in, tense. "The same thing I always make. Rice, chicken, sweet potato, and the spices. Those flavors of the south of yours." His voice sounded harsh. "Maybe that's what it was." Lara blinked, surprised. "David, are you implying that I—" He ran his hands through his hair, restless. "My children have always eaten simple things. I knew this could go wrong." That was a blow. Lara felt her body go cold. "Do you really think I would do something to harm your daughter?" David hesitated, but the damage was done. "Excuse me," she said, her voice firm. "I'll take her to the hospital." Hours later, at the emergency room, the diagnosis came: a virus. Nothing to do with food. Probably picked it up at school, the pediatrician said calmly. David fell silent. He looked at Lara with a mix of shame and regret, but it was too late. In the car on the way back home, the silence hurt more than any argument. Elena slept in the back seat, her little face sweaty and tired. Lara looked out the window. Her eyes stung, but she held back, not out of pride, but because she didn't want to cry for someone who clearly didn't trust her. "Lara," David began. "You don't need to say anything," she replied without looking at him. "I spoke foolishly. I was tired, worried, but that doesn't justify it." "No, it doesn't justify it," she said, her voice low but firm. "You love my children. I know that." She took a deep breath. "The problem is, you only realize it when everything's on the verge of collapse." He swallowed hard. "And you know what's worse, David? I was starting to love this home too. The routine. The little things. But I can't stay in a place where I'm seen as a threat, where the slightest thing I do can turn into blame. David didn't answer. That night, Lara did something she had been putting off for weeks. She sat on the bed in the guest room, opened her laptop, and started looking for a job. Nanny, cook, kitchen assistant. Anything, anywhere, she wouldn't feel invisible or disposable. The next day, while Elena rested and Ethan put a puzzle together on the living room floor, Lara slowly, silently, began to pack her suitcase. She folded her clothes, carefully put away her spices, and finally tucked in her grandmother's recipe book. She still didn't know how to tell the children. She just knew she needed to leave before it broke her completely. On the porch, Ethan watched her secretly, his eyes welling up. On the stairs, Elena held the thermometer, her fever almost gone, and her heart in ruins. Have you ever had to leave a place that began to feel like home, just because you were no longer respected there as you should have been? Leave a yes in the comments if this scene touched you too. Sometimes, the most difficult pain isn't rejection, it's being misunderstood by the person you most wanted to help. That night was long. David stood at Eleanor's bedroom door for almost half an hour, watching her sleep. Her fever had dropped. Her expression was calmer. But he wasn't. He returned to his office, opened his laptop, and couldn't type a single line. Lara's words echoed in his mind. I was starting to love this home, but I can't stay in a place where I'm seen as a threat. He slammed the laptop shut, sank into the armchair, and covered his face with his hands. It was as if, for the first time in months, something inside him was cracking. Not from Rebecca's death, that pain was familiar, but from the real possibility of losing, again, someone who had brought life back into that house. The next morning, David woke early, but didn't go to work. He made coffee, something he hadn't done since he couldn't even remember. He served it in the quiet kitchen and waited for the children to wake up. Ethan came down first. "Where's Aunt Lara?" he asked, still sleepy. David didn't know how to answer. He just looked at the boy and felt the lump in his throat tighten. Soon after, Elena appeared, hugging Lara's recipe book. "She's leaving, isn't she?" David knelt before his children. I don't know." Elena looked at him with eyes too large for such a small girl. "If she goes, will it be your fault?" David felt that like a punch to the chest, and he didn't answer, because the truth, which he didn't want to admit, was that yes, it would. Later, alone on the porch, David saw Lara walk by with her suitcase in her hands. She was going to deliver the documents for her new job. He thought about calling her. He thought about apologizing again, but all he could do was watch, feeling, for the first time in a long time, true fear. Not of going bankrupt, not of failing as a businessman, but of continuing to live in the same emptiness, now that he knew what it was like to have life in the house again. He didn't know if it would work, but for the first time, he wanted to try. Lara had already confirmed the new job, a family in Moema, 2 children, vegetarian kitchen, good salary, formal contract. But inside, everything felt wrong. She spent her days convincing herself it was the right decision, that she had given all she could to that family. But every time she closed her suitcase, a piece inside her seemed to come loose. It was then that Elena entered the room. "Aunt Lara, why are you packing your things?" Lara slowly sat on the bed and motioned for the girl to come closer. "I got a new job, sweetie. It's with a family who really needs me. But we need you too." Lara tried to smile, but she couldn't. "You're our family," Elena said, before running out. Minutes later, Ethan and Eleanor were in the hallway crying. David came running from his office. "What happened?" "Aunt Lara's leaving," Ethan accused, "and it's your fault." David looked at Lara, who kept her eyes fixed on the semi-open suitcase. He swallowed hard. He knew it was time. "Children, can you give us a minute?" Elena shook her head. "Are you going to speak badly of her again?" "No." David knelt down. "I just need to fix something." The children slowly left, not really wanting to. "Are you really leaving?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes, because of me." Lara took a deep breath. because of everything, because of how I was treated, because of the fear of confusing love with need, because staying here, it hurts me. David moved closer. Do you think I don't see it? That you're the best thing that's happened to this house since Rebecca left? Lara didn't answer. And the children, they'll get over it, she whispered, more to herself than to him. David ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. And me? Lara looked at him for the first time in days. You don't want me here, you tolerate me. That's not true. Then prove it. And with that sentence, she completely disarmed him. That night, David couldn't sleep. He lay staring at the ceiling, reliving every conversation, every gesture from Lara, every moment he could have done differently, and didn't. The muffled sound of Elena crying in the next room broke him inside. The next morning, he did what he hadn't done in ages. He turned off his phone, cancelled his meetings, and went to the kitchen. Lara was there, folding napkins, her face calm, but distant. Can I talk to you? He asked carefully. She nodded without taking her eyes off her task. I know I messed up, and I know it's not fair to ask you this, but can I try to fix it? Lara sighed. Do you know what hurt me the most, David? It wasn't what you said. It was the silence afterwards. The way you pretended it hadn't happened. David nodded, his eyes moist. I was scared. Scared of what? Of feeling again, of loving someone, of allowing myself to be happy, and even more, of my children seeing me smiling with another woman and thinking I was forgetting their mother. Lara slowly sat down. Do you really think smiling means forgetting? David shook his head. No, but I think I blame myself for wanting to smile again. And you arrived with that simple way about you, that food that tastes like home, and you disarmed everything I'd spent months trying to keep locked away. She watched him in silence. Lara, I don't want you to go. But not as a nanny. I want you to stay, as part of our family, as the woman you already are, even without realizing it. Lara swallowed hard. What if it's just loneliness, David? What if all this is just the absence of something? He approached her. And what if it's not? She looked away for a moment. Do you still love Rebecca? I'll always love her, but today I also love you. And that doesn't erase anything. It just shows I'm still capable. Lara took a deep breath. It was all there, the fear, the guilt, the confusion. But for the first time she felt that perhaps that love had space to blossom. That Saturday morning, the house was strangely silent. Lara had woken up early to prepare breakfast for the children, as she always did. But there was no longer as much firmness in her movements. It was her last day there. Her suitcases were packed, leaning against the guest room wall. She just hadn't said goodbye yet because she couldn't. Aunt Lara? Eleanor's voice came softly from the kitchen doorway. Are you really leaving? Lara turned, trying to smile. Yes, Princess. Ethan appeared right behind his sister, holding the rag doll Lara had sewn for him weeks earlier. Did we do something wrong? Lara knelt on the floor. Of course not, my love. You did everything right. You were my joy all these days. The children hugged her tightly. Then why are you going? She hesitated, because sometimes, even when we love a place very much, we need to leave so we don't get hurt anymore. When David entered the kitchen, he saw the scene. Lara on the floor, embracing the children, her eyes misty. His stomach sank. Lara, he said, his voice low. Can you wait a minute? She slowly stood up, her eyes fixed on him. The children slowly left the kitchen, reluctantly, but trusting. David took a deep breath. I didn't just come to apologize. I came to ask you to stay, truly, not as a nanny, as the woman of my life, as the person my children chose. And I did too. Lara remained silent. I know I don't deserve a second chance, but I also know you only find something like this once, and I found it. In you. She looked him in the eyes. Are you sure? I am. And if I mess up again, I'll learn, but I don't want to go on without you. And I asked them, Ethan and Elena, if they wanted you to stay. They asked me if that meant you would be their new mom. And I said that would only happen if you wanted it too. At that moment, two little heads peeked through the doorway. You can come in, David called. Ethan and Elena came running. "Are you going to be our real mom?" Elena asked with hope in her eyes. Lara looked at David, then at the children. "If you want, I'd love to." They shouted together, "We do!" The embrace of the three was immediate, tight, full of tears. David approached and enveloped all four. There in the kitchen where everything had begun, amidst plates, flour and memories, that family was finally remade. 18 months later, the scent of cornbread wafted from the windows of a small restaurant in Silver Lake. The sign above the door read, "Grandma Rosie's Flavors, Southern Soul Food." Lara adjusted her apron with difficulty, her round, pregnant belly making movements cumbersome. David appeared with a tray of warm grits. "Ready for the grand opening, Mrs. Lara?" "Ready," and with a baby kicking like a rocket. Ethan and Eleanor played near the counter, wearing personalized children's aprons. "Mom, can I serve the first customer?" Ethan asked. "You can, but be gentle and careful with the change." Eleanor pointed to the photos on the wall for a group of ladies. "This is my mom's grandma, the one who taught her to cook. And that's us eating shepherd's pie at Christmas." Lara watched everything with sparkling eyes. In that kitchen, she was no longer just the nanny. She was a mother. She was a wife. She was the owner of her own dream. And, finally, she was happy. Lara arrived in Los Angeles with a suitcase of clothes, a recipe book, and a shattered heart. She wasn't looking for love. She wasn't looking for a family. She just wanted a place where she could breathe without hurting. But, upon finding a grieving home, with 2 children who were saving food for a mother who wouldn't return, she discovered something much bigger. She discovered that love doesn't ask permission. It settles in amidst the mess, between dirty pots and drawings on the fridge. It grows slowly, like a cake in the oven. At first it seems like it won't work. Then it overflows. David learned that smiling again isn't betraying the past. It's honoring it with courage. And the children understood that their mother's love wasn't replaced. It was only added to, because a child's heart always has room for more. The lesson Lara learned is one that might speak to you too, that even when everything seems to fall apart, there's a kind of love that rebuilds. Sometimes it arrives in a spoonful of soup, or in a silent hug, or in a voice that says, "I believe in you," even when you no longer believe in yourself. Because her journey reminds us of something powerful about our own silent battles. We don't have to go back to being who we were. We can and should allow ourselves to be new. And sometimes the family that saves us isn't the one we have, but the one life gives us. If this story touched you in any way, leave a like. It's the simplest and most powerful way to show me it's worth continuing to tell stories like this. And I love knowing who's on the other side of the screen. Tell me in the comments below what city or country you're watching from. You're a bigger part of all this than you imagine. If you believe in the power of stories that heal, inspire and reconnect, subscribe to the channel. There's a lot of beautiful content coming, and every subscription gives me strength to continue. And now, don't leave yet. Choose one of the stories appearing on your screen and come with me to the next video.